Okay, YouTubers and space detectives, I've got a really interesting one for you to look at today. I've got a couple of large high-rise camera images up here. I've got the main page here. Now this is an image from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and these are really big high-res images. All you have to do is click on the links in the description below and you can look at these images I've uploaded for you to have a look at. You can do this on your mobile device as well. These upload nice and quick. And we have this so-called dune field. Now, a lot of these are dunes, of course, right? Now, this is the MRGB, which is merged red, green, and blue. So this is apparently the colour of them, right? They're sort of creamy coloured dunes, right? And they've got really interesting shapes to them. They're very uniform. Most of them are around the sort of 100 meters across mark. If you look at the measure here, they're quite large. Some are larger, some are smaller, but most of them are about the same size. Now, why would a bunch of sand all collect like this on flat ground, flat frozen ground, at the same sort of distance apart? Most of these are the same distance apart, give or take, right? There's long lines of them like this, and I have shown these before in previous videos, and some of them are very metallic looking. On Google Earth, if you go on Google Earth and go onto Mars from Google Earth, you see them from this distance. Now these are much larger. Some of them are 100 meters. Now 100 meters is over 300 feet, so they're about the same size as this. A lot of these are 400 feet wide. A lot of them are 300. And when you look at them on Google Earth Mars, they look very reflective and metallic, and I think some of them possibly are. And you get lots of lines of these things. Now unfortunately with this image, it doesn't go in very close, and when you zoom in, you're not really seeing a lot of detail. Okay, some of them are very bright, like this, and metallic looking, and some of them are very dark and have darker sand over them, depending on where they are. Now, there are different types of sand on Mars, of course. Some of it's kind of light, sort of browny, sort of reddish colour, and sand coloured, basically. And some of it's darker. Sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's red, sometimes it's brown. Okay, there's all different types of sand on Mars, and dust in different areas. And when you look at the planet Mars, you can see large blue areas on the planet. It looks a bit like water, but it's not. It's dark blue sand, okay? And some of it's even sort of purplish colour or charcoal black even, okay? So it depends what part of Mars you're on. And of course this sand drifts around, gets blown around over these things, right? Now that kind of explains some of it. And I've actually got a diagram up here of the different types of dunes that you get on Earth. Now on Mars they're a little bit different because obviously there's less gravity, but they should basically follow the same rules as we have here. We've got Barchan dunes, linear dunes, parabolic, transverse, star, and Barchan dunes become transverse. So we've got mixtures of dunes here, right, which explains some of what we're seeing, but not everything. And I wonder why NASA just called these dunes, because this blew my mind. When I looked at the colour image of this, I was like, oh my God, this is insane, right? And I'm really struggling with this mentally to get my head around what I'm looking at here, right? And you'll understand in a second. So they've just called them dunes. There's no explanation for this. They haven't probably even looked at them very closely. They probably thought, oh, there's some more dunes, icy dunes near the North or South Pole. These are, I'm not sure. It does give you a location here. I could probably find it on Google Earth Mars, actually. I'll work it out, but I'm guessing these are near the North Pole because that's where most of them are on Google Mars, right? So, now having said all that, I'm going to show you something here that's going to absolutely make you wonder what the hell's going on, right? Because there's different versions of these images. We got this one here, which is the MRGB one, merged red, green, and blue, right? Then we have this one. Now this is just in the red spectrum, so it looks kind of black and white. It's monochrome. These are the same things, but from another angle. These are not from the same angle, okay? They still look a bit like dunes, right? But what's going on here, if you look really close, If you zoom in, they've got veins on the side, right? You can see these veins along the side here, or round, going right round it. They've all got these veins on them. Now, why would dunes have veins? And they've also got what look like leaves or roots or something coming out of the top here. When you see them this way round, they look like fruit or plants, okay? Like gourds or something like that. Now, I'm not saying they are, but that's what they look like. And when you see the colour image, like I'm going to show you now, so pay attention to these veins. You can just about make them out. If I go in a bit closer, you can see these veins here, especially on this one, right? And then we've got these light parts coming out here, which look a bit like roots going into the ground here, perhaps, or coming out. It's very strange. They almost look like leaves even, I would say, right? Coming out here. I'm not saying they are, but I'm just saying they look a bit like that. And when you look at them from further back, they look like fruit. Okay? Now, let's look at the colour version of the image, which I've got up in high view here. And this is the same area, but these are round the other way. Now, this is from the RGB no map, which means that these are not orientated north, like the ones I just showed you. So they're from the other way round. We're looking at them from this angle instead of the other angle, okay? And this is insane. And you can see those veins, if I zoom in, right? Let's go in really close at this one. We've got veins on the side and a smooth orange body to it. I'm calling it a body. I don't really know what they are. But to me, this is extremely strange, right? Because you've got this light kind of white material coming out of one end, which for all intents and purposes looks a bit like leaves or something coming out and going into the ground here, right? Now I've got it in here and I've brightened these up quite considerably by about 30%, 40%, so we can see them a bit better. But I haven't done anything else. I've just basically enlarged it. I've taken a clip, I've enlarged it a bit, and I've brightened it right up and added a bit of contrast so we can see the veins on these, right? Now, this is weird because why would a sand dune, a normal sand dune, have veins and a roundish body like a giant gourd or fruit sitting on the ground like this? Why would they have that? You can actually see it. If I go darker here, let's go dark, and those veins should pop out. There we are, look. You can see the veins here. Are they veins or are they cracks? What are they? This is insane. Now, is it possible that these are actually giant plants that have sand that's drifted onto them? Is that possible? Because these are huge. These are 100 meters across. Now, some are bigger, some are smaller. These, I think, are a bit bigger than that. These are more like 150 or 120, right? There's loads of smaller ones, and there's some bigger ones as well. Some of them go up to about 200, but most of them are around the 100 meter mark. Some are a bit bigger, some are a bit smaller. Some are like 60, 70, some are 150, right? Now, let's go back to this a minute. You can see the different sizes here, and you can see where sand has drifted and joined a lot of them together in long lines here. So they grow in lines, like gourds do, like plants do, or they form in lines, I should say. I'm not saying they're necessarily growing, but is it possible that these are different stages of some kind of giant organic growth on the surface, like some kind of gourd or plant or fruit or some kind of weird organic structure that's growing? Because we have smaller ones down here, we have larger ones, and they really do look like they have leaves coming out of them. Look at this. I mean, this looks like a tomato. If you imagine that red, and these are leaves or something coming out of one end, we've got this sort of, and you can see these veins, right? You can see the veins. They're not all the same size. Is it possible these are different stages of growth of giant fruit or plants on the ground gourds or whatever. Is that possible? Because we've got smaller ones and larger ones, but they all conform roughly to the same shape, and they all have these light parts sticking out of them here, like this one, right? And these are the best examples here. We've got a whole nice bunch of them there. Now this looks like something you would see at some kind of fair or something, where you have people judging giant fruit. I mean, these are insane. Some of these are like pumpkins and all sorts of stuff going on here, right? Giant pumpkins and gourds. The gourd family are weird. They grow on the ground like this, and they're generally round, or some of them are sort of longer shaped, you know, like we have here. We've got different types, right? Different types of gourds here. Now, on Earth, some of them can grow really large, right? As we can see here, this one's massive. This bloke stood next to it there, look. So that's about 5 feet by 6 feet or something. Huge, right? They could grow massive, right? There are giant varieties of these on Earth, and they come in sort of different shapes and sizes, different types of gourds. Some are long, some are sort of double spheres like this, some are sort of obviously pumpkin or whatever shaped, right? And obviously, you know, people carve art into them because they're pretty cool to carve with, actually, because they're not too hard. So artists like them. And there's all different types. Now, I'm not saying these are gourds necessarily. I'm just comparing some of the details here. And these weird sort of rooty kind of leaf parts that come out of this one, like this, right? Which is that kind of white, thin material coming out like a root. It's got the same sort of colour to it. Similar stuff going on here, right? Very strange indeed. Now, a lot of these on the colour image here, this is the MRGB version. Now, this has obviously been brightened right up. And I'm not sure this is the actual colour of them, but these look actually like sand dunes, right? But is it possible that these particular sand dunes, which are in the same area, but not exactly the same area, these are nearby, is it possible that these are the same things, but that have sand that's blown over them, covering them up? Here, right? And they've got almost kind of a shell shape, where the sand is blown in a certain direction and covered them, right? Now, let's go back to this dune formation thing here, right? These Barkhan dunes, they're very common on the surface of Mars, as are the parabolic ones, right? As I've shown before. Now, if you had a whole bunch of roundish objects on the ground, right, equidistant or equidistant from each other, and the sand blew in a certain direction, they would start to form this sort of shape, which is what we have, right? This is what we have here with these. They're starting to form those sort of shapes, which are quite natural, but there must be something underneath these for the sand to form over, right? Stopping the sand from just blowing completely away. It forms a barrier on the ground, and then the sand forms on the object, okay? Whether that's a large rock or something else, or dome or a structure, whatever, okay? Very strange. But what's weird about these is they've got these similar things on them. They're almost like entrances here, right? I'm not saying they are entrances, but they've got those. Now this looks to me like the same sort of things as we've got here, but with more sand on them. These don't have a lot of sand on them, right? So you can see the veins, and you can see these leafy structures coming out, if that's what they are, or root structures coming out here, right? And when you see them in colour, it's like, well, hang on a minute. That isn't a sand dune. How can a sand dune have veins like this and what look like roots coming out one end or something? Absolutely insane, right? Absolutely insane. Let's have a look at some more down here. Now, not all of them look the same. Some of them are smaller, like these, but they still look pretty round. They still look like fruit, and they've still got these white parts coming out at one end here, like this, right? And if I zoom out, I'll show you, there's loads of them. These look like fruit or organic growth on the ground that are starting to be covered up with sand, like we have here. And the sand is blown over them and joined them in lines together like this. So they start to elongate as the sand blows up against them, right, from this direction or that direction. And then they start to join together in long lines. Very interesting, right? But why would they have veins on them like this? Here. Let's go in close. Now these are a bit dark, so you can't see them that well. But you can see the veins on this one. So I've taken a clip of that, obviously, like here. And now we can see them. Let's go in nice and close. Absolutely nuts. So they're kind of they're kind of fruit shaped or gourd shaped. They have veins on them and these weird white parts coming out of one end, which seem to go into the ground. Here, see that? This one goes into the ground. Got a dark shadow there. It looks like it's going right into the ground. Now we know in the polar regions, especially on Mars, that there are underground aquifers. In other words, underground lakes. Right? Is it possible that these are actual organic plants or fruit or vegetables, whatever you want to call them, gourds or whatever, giant plants that are sending runners right down into the ground to these underground aquifers, right? And they're growing in these huge fields of giant 100-meter diameter fruit. And then the sand is just blowing, when there's a sandstorm, the sand just blows over them. And then we end up with all these dunes, right? Because a lot of these are looking like fruit, but if the larger ones here, well, when you go to the smaller ones, they're kind of starting to join up where they're closer together, it seems. And the sand is blown along. And we've even got twin ones here. There's a twin one there, look. So, is it possible there are giant plants growing on the ground on Mars, like gourds, which are 100 meters across, right? Like these. Now, unfortunately, these aren't in colour, but there's loads of them here. Look at them all. And they've all got the same sort of design or shape to them. They look like tomatoes in this one. Absolutely insane. And they have these things coming out that seem to go into the ground, like roots coming out of one end, just like a gourd would have. Now, I'm going out on a limb here. I'm not saying these are, but I'm just showing you what I've found, and I'm trying to work out in my own mind what I'm looking at, because this is absolutely insane. And they really do look like leaves or roots sticking out of one end. And then at the other end we have another part, and some of them have two, right? But most of them have one. They have like one part here, which is like the bit that goes in, almost like an entrance here, right? And then we have the root part sticking out the other end, a bit like with these, right? You've got these parts that stick inwards, and then the root part where it joins into the ground or goes into the ground or along the ground comes out the other end, right? Now, I wish I had technical terms for these, but I really can't be bothered to look that up now. That's not the point of this exploration. What we're trying to figure out is, are these something other than just dunes? I think they could be. I could be wrong, but they're very, very strange. Now, on a planet such as Mars, which has only 37% of Earth's gravity, is it possible that fruit or plants could grow very, very large? I think it is. I really do think it is. They wouldn't have the constraints of gravity that we have on Earth, which limit the size of certain things, either animals or plants. Although in the distant past on Earth, we did have very giant plants and giant animals like dinosaurs, of course. Is it possible that these could be grown by an intelligent culture on Mars and turned into dwellings? Now, I'm going out on another limb here, a massive limb. This is just an idea. It's not even a proper theory. Is it possible that you could grow giant gourds or similar type things on the surface of Mars, with the roots going right down under the ground, below the permafrost, where there's water, liquid water, right? And it may only be 10 or 20 meters down, liquid water, right? Is it possible that you could grow these giant, and these are giant, I mean this one here, zoom out, this one here is over 100 meters. I would say it's about 150. That's crazy, right? Is it possible you could grow something that big, and then when it's sort of finished, or when it's ripe, you could actually cut a hole in it, and you could remove the material from the inside, right, and eat it. And then, once you'd hollowed it out, you could live inside it. Once it dried out, it would freeze. Obviously, if there's kind of watery, fleshy material inside these, which there may or may not be, of course, you could remove that, you could eat it, you could survive on it, right? And then, once that had been completely hollowed out, you'd be left with the shell, like a pumpkin. Like when you get a pumpkin, you could carve the insides of it out, and you'd have the harder outer part of the thing, which goes pretty hard. And on a freezing planet like Mars, that would freeze anyway. If there's any water in it, it would freeze anyway and be rock hard. And you would have yourself a ready-made house. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm just thinking out of the box here, as I usually do. You could actually, it is possible, you could grow giant fruit on the surface. Instead of making buildings, just grow these giant fruit, or some kind of genetically modified gourd or something. You could probably cross it with some other type of plant, or gourd or other thing, right? Genetically modify it so that they grow really large, over 100 meters. You could, once they're ready, you could just cut a hole in one end here, go in through the back end, the arse end, right? Go through the arse end here and hollow it out, and then you have yourself a ready-made house, which is 100 to 150 meters across. Some of them seem to have double features, like this one here. This one's, see, you could actually, I mean, the arse end of a fruit or a gourd, like these, like here, they look really like entrances, as if someone's actually tunneled into them. We've got these dark bits here, as if these are actually entrances, as if someone's built them. But they look organic. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So is it possible these are actually dwellings that were grown? In other words, they're using sort of organic, genetically modified organic technology, GM, right? Genetically modified. You could grow them on the ground, and once they're up to a decent size, you could hollow them out. You could eat the material inside, if it's even edible, but it may contain a lot of water. So you have a massive supply of water held inside it, right? You could tunnel part of it out, live in there, and have a ready supply of water. And when that one runs out, you just tunnel into the one next to it and go into this one instead. I mean, this is insane. I mean, if you were going to colonize a planet, wouldn't it make sense if you could grow something like these on the ground? Huge, giant gourds of some sort, like these may be. I'm not saying they are, I'm saying they may be. You could grow these on the ground. They may take a few years to grow. Okay, just come back in a few years when they're ready, and you just move in. You could move into one, hollow it out, live inside until all the fleshy, watery material inside is dried up. And then you could move into the next one, or use them as kind of as food and water supply facilities. So you don't need, you could live inside this one and then eat the others from the inside out, or drink from them as time goes on. And as long as you kept growing them, you'd have a limitless supply of water and food. So you've got, not only have you got shelter, but you've got water and food from the same thing, right? Wouldn't that be interesting as a concept for habitation on Mars? Just an idea, just an idea. I'm not saying that's what these are, but wouldn't that be good if it was? And you would actually move into one of these things and you would actually survive from the moisture and fleshy material inside until it all kind of been used up, and you'd either import it from another one or just move into another one and hollow it out. Do the same thing over and over again. These are huge. You could have a whole family of people, a large group of people could live inside one of these things. 10, 20 people maybe. They're big. I mean, some of them are 200 meters. This one's almost 200. This one here, yeah, that's got to be close. So that's big, right? That's 600 feet across, some of them. Plus, over 600 feet. So is it possible that what a lot of these genes we're seeing and a lot of these structures we're seeing on Mars, is it possible that these are actual living quarters that are grown on the ground, like gourds, and then the sand has drifted over some of them here, like we have here, but some of them are exposed and maybe newer, or the wind has blown some of the sand away, like we have possibly here. We have another twin one here. The twin one here, the actual, what looks like the root system here seems to be joined together. And a lot of them have these, what look like arch-shaped entrances here, like this one. Look at this, here. And then we've got a dark bit, as if someone or something is tunneled into it. There's another one here. They're all over. They've all got these. Some have got two, some are kind of twinned. But most of them have got these at one end, and then the leafy type things, the white leafy material, whatever that is, at the other end. Absolutely insane. So before I go on any longer, I'm going to call it there, because basically I'm going to take a load of clips of these and enhance them for you and put them in at the end anyway. I'm going to take a bunch of clips, but check these out. This is mind-blowing, what we're looking at here. I'm not saying these are gourds, but is it possible they could be? And have I just stumbled upon something that may be the answer to colonising Mars? If we genetically modify something like this, we could grow them on the ground and move into them and survive on the watery, fleshy material that's inside them, if they were big enough. Now, of course, we'd have to GM them up to a size that it would work. But what about these? Perhaps these are that, and we wouldn't have to do it. Perhaps we could just move straight into them and turn these into living quarters. Jesus Christ, what have I stumbled on here? Absolutely insane. Look at the veins on these things. Does that look to you like just a standard sand dune? Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you soon.